The lecture hall of Nova Prime Academy stretched wide, its ceilings glinting with embedded light panels that reflected the metallic floors below. It was early morning, yet the hum of conversation filled the air as students, researchers, and professors settled into their seats. The annual Innovation Showcase was one of the most prestigious events in the Galactic academic calendar, and this year, the atmosphere was electric. People whispered speculations about the new technologies that would be revealed. Some were curious, some skeptical, and a few were downright dismissive. Among them, Kale Rin, a young researcher barely 22, stood nervously at the back, adjusting the straps of the small device he carried in a reinforced case. Kale's work had been controversial from the start. While the Academy focused on practical interstellar propulsion and weaponization, he had chosen a path that seemed fantastical to many, bending the perception of time itself. He had spent years theorizing, building, and testing in secrecy, convinced that human ingenuity could overcome even the laws of physics as they were understood. But his colleagues, including the Academy's top minds, had laughed at his ideas. His papers had been rejected, his projects dismissed, and even now whispers followed him as he walked past the glass-paneled walls into the main hall. Alara Vex was already on stage. She was one of the most celebrated scientists in the Academy, known for her brilliance as well as her sharp tongue. Her presentations were flawless, her voice crisp and confident, and her gaze could pierce through any audience member with the subtle power of intimidation. She had perfected the art of command, knowing exactly when to punctuate her words with a smile, a raise of the brow, or a dismissive gesture. When she saw Kale enter, a slight smirk curled at the corner of her lips. She thrived on attention, and the presence of someone she considered inexperienced and naive made the day far more entertaining for her. "And now," Alara began, her voice echoing across the hall, "we have a special guest. One who claims he can manipulate the flow of time with nothing but a device and some imagination." Her words dripped with derision. "Please, everyone, contain your excitement." The laughter that followed was immediate and mocking. Kale's heart sank, but he forced himself to stand tall. He reminded himself that ridicule had always been part of the process. For those who dared to imagine the impossible, skepticism was a constant companion. Kale took a deep breath and stepped forward. The lights reflected off his glasses, casting faint shadows across his young face. He carried the small device carefully, cradling it like it was made of glass. The hall seemed to grow quieter as students turned their heads toward him. Some of them were curious, others were laughing behind their hands, and a few simply watched with detached interest. He knew this demonstration would decide not just his reputation, but potentially the way humanity viewed the boundaries of science itself. Alara leaned against the podium, her expression a mix of amusement and challenge. "Tell us, Kale," she said, her tone condescending, "how do you propose to prove that humans can bend time? Surely you don't expect us to take this seriously." Her gaze swept the audience and she smiled as they tittered. "Or perhaps you'll admit that your theory is just that, a theory destined to remain a dream." Kale ignored the sting of her words. Instead, he focused on the device. It was a compact orb, only the size of a fist, made of layered, translucent alloys that shimmered faintly with internal light. He had designed it to create controlled temporal distortions, not large enough to endanger anyone but sufficient to demonstrate his theory beyond doubt. His fingers hovered over the activation sequence, and for a moment he closed his eyes, centering himself. "Alara," he said finally, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart, "I don't expect belief, I expect observation. That is all that matters in science." His words were calm, deliberate, and even carried a hint of quiet defiance. Some in the audience raised their eyebrows. They had not expected a response quite like that. Kale continued, lifting the orb into the center of the stage. It pulsed softly, casting ripples of light across the faces of the audience. Alara's smirk faltered slightly. She leaned forward, peering at the device. "And what exactly will this do?" she asked, her voice attempting to mask a twinge of concern. "I hope you're aware, Kale, that time manipulation is not merely theoretical. One miscalculation and—" He activated the device. The hum began low, almost imperceptible, then grew steadily until it resonated throughout the hall. The light from the orb intensified, forming a visible ripple in the air around it. The first reaction was disbelief. Papers and small objects on the floor began to lift, hovering midair as if caught in a gentle updraft. Holographic displays flickered, paused, and then showed a strange reversal of movement. The audience froze, unsure whether to panic or to marvel. Cale's heart raced. He had practiced this countless times, but nothing matched the feeling of performing it live in front of a hall full of witnesses. He adjusted the orb slightly, and the ripple expanded. Small waves of distortion ran across the room. He could see his own reflection bend on the metal surfaces, stretching and compressing in ways that made him dizzy for a moment. Yet he remained focused, guiding the device's field, ensuring it stayed controlled. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is it real? I can't believe what I'm seeing. How is this possible?" Even the professors who had dismissed him before were silent, their mouths slightly open, as they tried to comprehend the evidence in front of them. Alara, the instigator of the ridicule, now stood frozen. Her confident posture had wavered, replaced by an almost imperceptible tension. She had spent her life mastering appearances, controlling perception, and intimidating peers. Now she was confronted with raw proof that someone she considered inferior could accomplish what she deemed impossible. Cale spoke again, his voice calm despite the incredible chaos around him. "I said observation is all that matters. Watch carefully." He raised his hand and motioned for a small object, a metal pen, to move through the field. The pen lifted, hovered, spun slowly, then reversed its path in midair, finally landing exactly where it had started. The audience gasped collectively, a sound that echoed like a wave through the hall. He continued demonstrating, creating small-time loops, freezing falling water in a container, and then returning it without a drop spilled. He explained in simple terms what was happening. The device was creating a localized temporal field, bending time slightly for objects within a controlled radius. The effect was mesmerizing and tangible. Alara, trying to recover, attempted to speak, but her words stumbled. It's impossible," she stopped, realizing no explanation could match what was occurring before her eyes. Cale's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the panic and astonishment spreading through the hall. For all her years of experience, all her accolades, she could not claim understanding, and for the first time she was powerless. Students began moving closer, their fear giving way to fascination. Some tried to reach out to touch the shimmering air, curious if the ripple could be felt. The hum of the orb was constant, almost musical, and it filled the room with a sense of awe. Cale walked through the center of the field, unaffected, guiding the demonstration with precision. His earlier fear melted into confidence. Every calculation had been correct, every risk anticipated. Today, the hall would witness the proof of human ingenuity and determination. Cale paused, letting the effect stabilize. He spoke once more, addressing the audience directly. "Time is not a fixed line. It is not something that cannot be influenced. Humanity has limits only because we perceive them as limits. We can surpass them. We can bend what we believe unchangeable. That is the gift of curiosity, persistence, and courage." The words hung in the air. The room was silent, the earlier laughter and ridicule completely evaporated. Even Alara, who had built a career on ridicule and intellect, found herself questioning her assumptions. She had underestimated him, underestimated the human drive to explore beyond perceived boundaries. The ripple of light gradually subsided, the orb dimming as Cale deactivated it. Normality returned to the hall, yet the audience remained frozen in disbelief. Objects returned to their original places. Holographic displays resumed their normal flow. Yet the memory of what they had just witnessed lingered in their minds. They had seen something that challenged the very foundation of their understanding. Cale held the device close, feeling a surge of relief and pride. This was just the beginning. Today, he had proven that what was impossible for others was achievable for those willing to persist. Human curiosity, human intelligence, and human courage could reach farther than anyone had imagined. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, Cale knew that the seeds of change had been planted in every mind that witnessed his demonstration. Alara finally stepped forward, her expression unreadable. The smirk had vanished, replaced with a cold, careful neutrality. She had underestimated him, but now, in the presence of undeniable evidence, she had to reconsider everything she thought she knew. The hall that had been filled with ridicule and laughter was now filled with awe and respect. And Cale Rin, once the subject of mockery, stood at the center as proof that human potential could defy expectation. The first part of the showcase ended, but Cale knew this was only the start. Today, he had faced ridicule and emerged victorious, armed with nothing but truth, intellect, and the unwavering belief that humans could achieve what others deemed impossible. The silence that had settled over the hall after Cale's demonstration was almost deafening. Students, professors, and visitors all struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. A few held their devices aloft, trying to capture the impossible event, but the images on their screens could barely do justice to the way time had bent, twisted, and flowed back around Cale. The demonstration had been controlled, precise, and utterly undeniable. Whispers began to spread through the audience, growing louder, more urgent. "Did you see that? He really did it," one student murmured to another. "No way, this changes everything," another whispered, eyes wide. The professors, who had sat with arms crossed and skeptical expressions just moments before, now exchanged cautious glances. Cale had proven that his theory wasn't just plausible, it was real. Alara Vex remained on stage, her face a mixture of disbelief and frustration. She had spent years building her reputation as the Academy's top mind, the one whose theories and experiments no one dared to challenge. And yet here stood a young researcher, barely known beyond the student body, demonstrating something that even she could not explain at first glance. For the first time, she felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel: uncertainty. Cale noticed her gaze, sharp and calculating despite her outward composure. He felt no fear, only determination. She had ridiculed him, questioned his abilities, and laughed at his dreams. But now he held proof in his hands, proof that human curiosity and perseverance could defy expectations. He decided to address the audience again, knowing that the moment was delicate and could either cement his credibility or invite new ridicule if mishandled. "Everyone here saw it," Cale began, his voice calm and deliberate, echoing slightly in the spacious hall. "You saw time bend. You saw objects move in ways you thought impossible, and you saw that it can be controlled safely, precisely, and intentionally. This isn't magic. This isn't luck, this is human ingenuity." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Some students nodded, their previous doubts dissolving. Others still looked skeptical, trying to rationalize what they had seen. But Cale's calm demeanor and the undeniable evidence before them made doubt harder to sustain. Alara finally found her voice, though it was quieter, more measured than before. "Cale, this is remarkable, but are you certain of the limits? Are we not risking something catastrophic?" Her tone was less mocking now and more cautious, tinged with a hint of genuine concern. She understood the danger better than anyone. Experiments like these had the potential to destabilize the very fabric of reality if mishandled. Cale nodded. "Yes, I have accounted for all variables. The device only affects objects within a small, controlled radius, and the effect lasts only as long as I allow it. There's no risk to the wider environment." He held up the device, and the soft glow pulsed gently in his hands. "I've spent years refining the calculations, testing in isolation, ensuring that everything is precise. Today, you have witnessed the results. Controlled, safe, and reproducible." The crowd exhaled collectively. Some of the younger students clapped quietly, unsure if it was appropriate, while others whispered excitedly to one another. The professors remained silent, though their eyes betrayed a mix of awe and analytical curiosity. They were already thinking of the implications, applications in propulsion, communication, even defense. The possibilities seemed endless, yet grounded in the proof before them. Alara stepped forward cautiously, her eyes locked on Cale. "Show us something more," she challenged, her tone no longer mocking but probing. "If this device works as you claim, I want to see it applied in a more complex scenario." She wasn't trying to humiliate him now. Instead, her voice carried the subtle authority of a mentor testing a prodigy, seeing if his skill was real and not just luck or spectacle. Cale's lips curved into the faintest smile. This was the test he had hoped for. He moved to a large, transparent container of water at the side of the stage. With a few adjustments to the device, he created a small temporal field around it. The water began to freeze midair, droplets suspended like tiny crystals. Then, with a precise flick of his fingers, he reversed the flow, making the droplets fall upward before settling back into the container perfectly. Gasps filled the hall. The effect was breathtaking, almost hypnotic. Students and professors alike leaned forward to observe every detail. Some tried to record it on their devices, though again, the video could not capture the full beauty and strangeness of what was happening. The room was alive with a mixture of fear, awe, and exhilaration. Alara's expression shifted as she studied Kale carefully. She had always been confident, knowing her intellect surpassed that of most colleagues and students. Yet now she saw a spark she had rarely encountered, pure brilliance coupled with courage, a willingness to challenge assumptions and demonstrate truth in the face of ridicule. For the first time, she recognized someone she could neither dismiss nor underestimate. As Kale continued the demonstration, moving small mechanical devices through the temporal field, he explained the principles behind his work. Time is not a river, flowing steadily and uniformly, he said. It is a fabric, flexible and responsive to precise manipulation. Human understanding has treated it as fixed because it is easier, because doubt is safer than experimentation. But what I have shown is that careful observation and meticulous calculation allow us to stretch what was once considered immutable. The audience listened intently. Even those who had doubted him were now captivated. Every word, every motion, every pulse of light from the device reinforced the reality of his discovery. Kale could feel the shift in perception around him. He had crossed the threshold from student to pioneer, from dismissed theorist to undeniable innovator. A sudden sound drew everyone's attention, a faint alarm from the device itself. Kale's heart skipped a beat, but he remained composed. The device had a built-in safety protocol that triggered in case of any instability. He adjusted a few controls, and the hum returned to its normal, steady rhythm. The minor alarm only heightened the tension in the hall, reminding everyone present of the incredible power and responsibility Kale wielded. Alara approached, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Kale," she said, her voice steady now, "I underestimated you. Your control, your understanding, it's impressive. You've proven more than I could have imagined." Her words lacked any trace of sarcasm. Instead, they carried a recognition of achievement and a subtle acknowledgement of her own earlier misjudgment. Kale nodded. "I appreciate that, Alara. My intention was never to prove anyone wrong. I only wish to demonstrate what is possible when human curiosity is allowed to flourish without fear of ridicule or dismissal." He looked around the hall at the students and faculty, noting the mixture of awe, excitement, and contemplation in their expressions. Humanity has a history of underestimating itself, of assuming limitations that exist only in perception. Today, we begin to change that. The atmosphere in the hall had shifted completely. Where moments ago there had been laughter and derision, there was now anticipation and respect. Students whispered excitedly to one another, some already sketching notes, drawing diagrams, or considering applications. Professors leaned forward, their analytical minds racing to explore the implications. Even Alara, for all her pride and intellect, seemed momentarily humbled by the undeniable evidence of Kale's success. Kale moved among the audience, inviting questions and demonstrating additional features of the device. He showed how small mechanical systems could be moved backward and forward in time, how localized events could be controlled without affecting the environment, and how precise calculations allowed for exact reversals of motion. Each demonstration deepened the audience's understanding and reinforced the credibility of his work. A young student raised their hand hesitantly. "Could this be used for travel?" they asked, voice trembling with excitement. Kale smiled, considering the question carefully. "Potentially," he said, "but what I am demonstrating today is controlled experimentation. Travel through time for larger systems or humans carries risks far beyond this scale. We must first understand the principles, the limitations, and the consequences before attempting anything more ambitious." Another student asked about communication. Could messages be sent backward or forward in time? Kale explained that small-scale experiments suggested it was possible, but the ethical and technical challenges were immense. "Humanity must proceed carefully," he said. "Curiosity must be tempered by responsibility. The greatest discoveries are meaningless if they are not used wisely." The hall remained captivated, the excitement tempered by the seriousness of Kale's words. It was clear that this demonstration was more than a single experiment. It was the opening of a new era of exploration, innovation, and human achievement. Alara, observing quietly, realized that Kale had not only proven a groundbreaking concept, but had also displayed something rarer: integrity, patience, and the humility to let the evidence speak for itself. She could feel her own sense of authority shift, the need to dominate or ridicule replaced by a growing respect for someone who had faced mockery and emerged victorious. As the session drew to a close, Kale carefully deactivated the device, and the final ripple of shimmering light faded. Normal time resumed, objects returned to their places, and the hall filled with murmurs of amazement. Students exchanged glances, some unable to speak, some already plotting experiments of their own, inspired by the demonstration. Professors discussed quietly among themselves, debating the next steps for research, potential applications, and the ethical implications. Kale walked to the side of the stage, feeling both relief and satisfaction. He had faced ridicule, doubt, and fear, yet he had remained steadfast in his pursuit of truth. Today, he had proven that human ingenuity and perseverance could surpass even the most entrenched skepticism. And as the audience began to disperse, talking excitedly among themselves, Kale knew that this was only the beginning. His work would inspire others, challenge assumptions, and redefine what humanity believed to be possible. Alara approached him once more, her expression now a mixture of admiration and contemplation. "Kale," she said quietly, "you've not only changed our understanding of time, you've changed our understanding of what humans can achieve. I think we need to talk about the future." Kale met her gaze, sensing a mixture of challenge and collaboration in her words. The hall, once filled with mockery, was now a place of possibility, and the future of humanity had just grown infinitely larger. The day after the demonstration, the academy was buzzing in ways Kale had never experienced. Hallways were crowded with students, professors, and visiting scientists, all discussing what they had seen. Every conversation seemed to start with the words, "Did you see what Kale Rin did?" The quiet whispers of ridicule that had followed him for years had vanished, replaced with awe and curiosity. Kale walked through the corridors, holding the orb carefully. Even the janitorial staff paused to watch him pass, their eyes wide with a mixture of respect and fear. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing on him. This was no longer just a project. His work was now a symbol of human potential, a beacon that others would look to, hoping to understand or replicate what he had achieved. Alara Vex met him at the lab door, her expression composed but thoughtful. "Kale, the academy directors want to meet. They've scheduled a special session with the research council. They want to discuss next steps and, I suspect, manage the publicity." He nodded. "I expected that. Let them talk. I need to focus on the device." She followed him into the lab. "Focus, yes, but you should also understand the responsibility now. This isn't just about science anymore. People are watching, not just here, across planets, even other systems. Word spreads faster than you think." Kale placed the orb on the workbench, and its faint glow pulsed softly. "I know. I've thought about the implications. If misused, this technology could be catastrophic, but if used wisely—" He let the words trail, leaving the sentence open to interpretation. The directors arrived promptly, led by Director Harvin, a stern man known for his methodical approach. He had reviewed Kale's data personally since the demonstration and carried the weight of interstellar authority. Behind him were several other council members, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. "Kale Rin," Director Harvin began, "your demonstration yesterday has caused significant interest and concern. The council must discuss how to proceed. Before we decide, we need a full explanation of the device, its functions and limitations." Kale stepped forward, calm despite the attention. "The device generates a localized temporal field. Within this field, the flow of time can be slowed, reversed, or paused for objects in its range. It is precise and controllable. The field radius is limited. No living organism has been harmed during testing. All calculations include safety protocols to prevent unintended distortions." The council members exchanged glances. One woman, a physicist with years of experience, spoke first. "You claim full control, but what about indirect consequences?" "We observed effects during the public demonstration. The objects returned to their positions perfectly, but time itself may have reacted beyond our instruments." "How can you be certain there are no residual effects?" Kale took a breath. "I cannot predict every variable in a dynamic environment, but I have tested the device under controlled conditions extensively. The demonstration was a calculated risk, intended to show proof of concept safely. Residual temporal effects decay quickly and are contained within the immediate environment. Long-term monitoring is underway, and no anomalies have been recorded. Director Harvin's eyes narrowed slightly. You took a significant risk with the Academy present. Cale met his gaze evenly. Yes, but the proof was necessary. Skepticism alone cannot advance understanding. Observation must follow theory, and I needed the evidence in a controlled but visible setting. The council murmured among themselves. Alara stepped in. Cale's calculations are precise. He has shown competence beyond what we initially believed. While the risks are real, the potential benefits are enormous. Another council member, a senior engineer, leaned forward. Benefits? Do you realize what this implies? Travel, communication, even defense systems could be revolutionized, but misuse could destroy planetary ecosystems or destabilize colonies. Have you considered these outcomes? Cale nodded. Every calculation accounts for potential misuse. The device is not a weapon. It cannot amplify large-scale temporal distortions without precise, human-controlled input. Its main function is observation and controlled experimentation. Its applications in transportation, temporal research, and even energy management are promising if developed responsibly. Director Harvin leaned back, assessing the young man before him. And what of human error? One mistake could have consequences far beyond the Academy. Cale's expression was steady. Then training is essential. Only those who fully understand the device and its limitations should operate it. Human oversight must remain central to its use. That is the only way to ensure safety while advancing knowledge. A long silence followed. The council weighed his words carefully. It was clear that Cale was not just a young prodigy. He was someone who understood responsibility and foresight. The fact that he had performed publicly under scrutiny without panic or error added weight to his credibility. Finally, Director Harvin spoke. Very well. We will establish a dedicated research division under your guidance. You will oversee development, monitor safety, and train staff. This division will report directly to the council. Any deviation or misuse and the project will be suspended immediately. Cale nodded. Understood. Alara placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. It begins, she said quietly, and begin it did. Within days, Cale assembled a small team of trusted students and researchers. They set up secure laboratories with advanced monitoring systems. Each day was filled with experiments, simulations, and careful calibration. The orb had become more than a device. It was a key to understanding possibilities that had never been attempted before. Cale spent long hours analyzing temporal data. Every fluctuation, every subtle variation in the orb's field was recorded and studied. He began discovering patterns, small resistances in the temporal field, moments where time seemed to push back unexpectedly. These anomalies were minor but persistent, and they hinted at larger truths about the nature of time. One evening, as Cale worked alone, he noticed a reading he had never seen before. A faint resonance, not originating from the device itself, but interacting with it in a subtle, precise way. He ran simulations to verify. Every result confirmed the same thing. The device was not just influencing time locally, it was interacting with something external. Something that already existed. The realization made his pulse quicken. He understood then that humanity's reach into time was being noticed, and perhaps not just by human eyes. He shared his findings with Alara the next morning. This resonance, it isn't human. It's a response. Someone or something is aware when we manipulate time. Alara frowned, leaning over the data. Aware how? Are you suggesting intelligence? Cale nodded. Yes, we were not operating in isolation. Our actions have consequences beyond our perception. This resonance is deliberate. It adapts, responds, tests us. Alara's eyes widened. If that's true, the implications are enormous. If we've attracted attention from an advanced civilization or intelligence, we need to be extremely cautious. Even one misstep could provoke, well, I don't know what. Cale's gaze hardened. I know, but we cannot stop advancing. Knowledge cannot be hidden forever. We have to understand the device and the response it provokes carefully and deliberately. That is the only way forward. Weeks passed. The team worked tirelessly, refining the device, running simulations, and logging every temporal fluctuation. The initial public demonstration had inspired confidence, but now the stakes were higher. Cale felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him more than ever. Every experiment carried both potential discovery and unseen risk. Then, one evening, a new anomaly occurred. The orb pulsed spontaneously, stronger than ever before. Temporal readings spiked across all sensors. Lights flickered. Objects in the laboratory lifted briefly, as if caught in a localized time loop, then settled back in their original positions. Cale rushed to stabilize the device. He adjusted settings, dampened the field, but the pulse repeated, stronger each time. The pattern was deliberate, rhythmic. Someone or something was testing their control. Alara, observing the event, realized the gravity of the situation. Cale, it's a message. Whoever or whatever is responsible, they are aware of our presence and testing our response. Cale nodded, determination in his eyes. Then we respond. Carefully, we show that humanity is capable of precision, control, and restraint. That we are ready to understand what we touch, rather than recklessly exploiting it. The next morning, the council convened again. Cale presented the anomalies, demonstrating the precise control of the device and the unexpected interactions. These readings are external responses. They are not random. We must treat this as a first contact of a different kind. Not aggression, but observation. And we must prove that we are capable of responsible action. A professor spoke from the back. Cale, if this intelligence can observe our temporal manipulations, how can we ensure safety? We don't understand their limits or intentions. Cale's answer was simple, measured. We proceed with caution, guided by evidence, observation, and ethical responsibility. We demonstrate control without recklessness. Knowledge is our shield, curiosity is our tool, and patience is our guide. Alara looked at him, pride and admiration in her gaze. He had faced ridicule, public embarrassment, and doubt, and now he faced a challenge that reached beyond humanity itself. Yet he remained steady, calm, and capable. The council nodded in agreement. A new directive was issued. All experiments were to continue under strict supervision, with full monitoring and documentation. Cale and Alara were tasked with leading the division and training the next generation of researchers in both science and responsibility. As the day ended, Cale stood alone on the balcony of the academy looking at the stars. Somewhere beyond the visible reaches of space, something or someone had noticed them, and they had responded. He closed his eyes and whispered softly, "We are ready. We will show them humanity is worthy." For the first time, he felt not fear but anticipation. The universe was no longer a distant canvas of stars. It was a challenge, a test, and an opportunity. And Cale Rin, once ridiculed publicly, was at the center of it all. The academy had never been this full. News of Cale Rin's breakthrough spread far beyond Nova Prime within days. What began as whispers in classrooms turned into official transmissions across research networks, planetary councils, and interstellar defense channels. Scientists requested access to his data. Military officials demanded risk assessments. Corporate leaders offered funding. Reporters flooded the academy gates, hoping for a glimpse of the young man who had bent time in a public hall and walked through it like it was nothing more than mist. Cale had expected attention. He had not expected pressure. He stood alone in the laboratory assigned to him after the showcase. It was larger than his old workspace, filled with advanced tools and polished surfaces, but it felt colder. The device rested on the main table, its surface dim and quiet. The orb that had once been mocked was now considered the most important invention in human history. Behind the glass walls, teams of observers monitored every movement he made. Security had tripled. Access was restricted. Even students needed clearance to enter this level of the academy. Alara Vex stood near the entrance, watching him. Her posture was no longer arrogant. It was measured, thoughtful. In the days since the demonstration, she had become his official collaborator. The academy directors believed that pairing experience with innovation would ensure stability. "You haven't slept much," she said quietly. Cale gave a small shrug. "There's too much to calculate." It was true. Since the showcase, he had refined the device's algorithms, strengthening its safety protocols. But something else had changed. During deeper analysis, he discovered small irregularities in the temporal readings, tiny distortions that had not appeared during private testing. At first, he thought they were errors. They were not. The device was not only bending time inside the hall, it was interacting with something larger, something already present in the universe. Alara stepped closer to the table. You found something, he nodded. When I activated the device in the hall, it responded to resistance, not physical resistance, temporal resistance. She frowned. Meaning? Meaning time isn't passive, it pushes back. The words hung in the air. Before she could reply, alarms suddenly flashed red across the laboratory walls. The monitoring screens lit up with cascading data streams. One of the researchers shouted from behind the glass. Energy spike detected, upper atmosphere, north quadrant. Kale's eyes widened. He hadn't activated the device. Another alarm sounded, louder this time. The building trembled faintly. Outside the tall windows, the sky above Nova Prime shimmered unnaturally, like heat waves rippling across metal. Alara moved toward the main console. That's your signature. The same frequency. Kale stared at the orb. It was still dark. No, he whispered. That's not me. On the large display screen, an image appeared, an expanding distortion in the sky, circular and luminous. It pulsed with controlled precision. This was not random. It was intentional. Someone else had replicated his work, or something had responded. A transmission signal pierced through the Academy's network. The image shifted, revealing a structure forming inside the distortion. Metallic, angular, unfamiliar. It did not resemble human engineering. The room fell silent except for the steady pulse of alarms. Alara's voice was steady but tense. We are not alone in this discovery. Kale's mind raced. If time truly behaved like a fabric, then bending it would send ripples. Ripples could be detected. If humanity had learned to manipulate time, perhaps others had done so long ago. The distortion in the sky stabilized. A shape emerged fully now, an enormous vessel suspended above the planet. It hovered without sound. Its surface reflected light in strange patterns, as if it existed slightly out of sync with the world around it. A message transmitted directly into every screen across the Academy. Symbols appeared first, then they shifted into recognizable language. You have disturbed the current. The voice that followed was calm and precise. It did not carry emotion, yet it felt heavy with authority. Alara's hands tightened on the console. Disturbed the current? Kale stepped forward, heart pounding but mind sharp. They're talking about time, the voice continued. Your species has achieved temporal manipulation at an early stage of development. This carries consequences. A murmur of fear spread through the laboratory. Security teams scrambled into position. Defense satellites activated in orbit. Kale swallowed hard. He had dreamed of proving humanity's potential. He had not imagined that proof would attract attention from beyond. The message shifted again. We are the custodians of flow. We monitor stability. Your interference risks fracture. Alara leaned close to Kale. They're warning us. No, he said quietly. They're judging us. The sky darkened as the vessel adjusted position. A thin beam of light extended downward, stopping just above the Academy dome. It did not strike. It simply hovered like a measuring instrument. Data flooded the lab screens again. The beam was scanning the temporal signature of the planet. Kale made a decision. I need to activate the device. Alara turned sharply. That could escalate this. They already responded to it. If they think we are unstable, we need to show control. Without waiting for permission, Kale lifted the orb. His hands were steady despite the fear rising in his chest. He input precise coordinates and activated the lowest power setting. The familiar hum filled the room. Outside, the beam flickered slightly. Kale expanded the temporal field carefully, not wide enough to distort objects violently, but strong enough to demonstrate precision. Inside the lab, a small metallic tool lifted, paused midair, then returned exactly to its place. On the screen, the alien vessel adjusted again. The beam narrowed. The voice returned. Stability detected. Control level exceeds projection. Alara released a slow breath. Kale spoke clearly, knowing the transmission would carry his words. We understand risk. We seek knowledge, not destruction. We do not bend time recklessly. There was a pause long enough to make everyone uneasy. You were ridiculed for your discovery, the voice stated suddenly. Kale stiffened. They had accessed public records. Yes, he replied. Yet you persisted. He met the screen without flinching. Yes, another pause. Resilience is uncommon at this stage of development. Alara glanced at him, surprised by the shift in tone. The beam of light slowly retracted. The vessel's glow softened. You have proven adaptability. We will not intervene. Relief washed through the laboratory, but the voice continued. However, understand this, time is not merely a tool, it is a shared dimension. Your actions echo beyond your perception. If instability increases, we will return. The message faded. The distortion in the sky began to collapse inward, shrinking into a point of light before vanishing completely. The atmosphere stabilized. The alarms ceased. Silence filled the laboratory once more. For several seconds, no one moved. Then the room erupted in stunned conversation. Some researchers laughed in disbelief. Others sat down heavily, overwhelmed. Alara turned to Kale slowly. You just negotiated with a civilization that monitors time itself. Kale deactivated the device carefully. The hum faded. They weren't here to destroy us, he said softly. They were here to test us. Outside, emergency broadcasts shifted from panic to cautious optimism. Across the planet, billions had witnessed the appearance of the vessel. And they had also seen it leave without firing a single shot. Humanity had not been silenced. It had been acknowledged. Hours later, the Academy held an emergency assembly in the same grand hall where Kale had once been mocked. The seats were full again, but this time there was no laughter. Alara stood at the podium, her voice echoing clearly. Days ago, this hall witnessed ridicule. Today, it witnesses consequence. Kale Rin's work did more than bend time. It announced our presence to those who guard it. She stepped aside. Kale walked forward, remembering the sting of humiliation he had felt in this very place. The memory no longer burned. It strengthened him. He looked across the crowd, students, professors, leaders. We are not the most advanced species, he began in simple, steady words. But we are curious, we are brave, and when we are mocked, we do not disappear, we improve. A faint ripple of smiles moved through the audience. We learned today that we are not alone in our understanding of time. Others watch, others measure, but they did not stop us. They saw control, they saw responsibility. He paused. They saw humanity. The hall remained silent, but not in disbelief, in respect. Alara felt it too. The shift was complete. Kale was no longer the quiet researcher in the back row. He was the symbol of what humans could become when doubt did not crush ambition. Outside, the sky of Nova Prime was clear again. No distortions, no vessels, but everything had changed. Humanity had stepped into a larger universe, one where intelligence was measured not by power alone, but by restraint and resilience. And in the center of it all stood a young man who had once been laughed at publicly. Now, when he spoke, the world listened. The truth had not only silenced the hall, it had echoed across the stars.